Sorry for the pause there. As is often the case, I had too many windows open here. Let me get over here where I belong. Okay, so, I'm better, but clearly I'm not 100%. This 5 Watt Live is brought to you with the support of TrueFire. By the way, TrueFire is currently running a Black Friday sale, the All Access Pass for just $79. My good buddy, my Fender rep, wrote to me and he said that he wanted to be able to support me, but at the same time, he wanted to get a good deal. So I said, hey, buy the $79 thing and then go to the store, 5 Watt World's merch store, and load up there. And then everybody will win, especially me. Anyway, it's good to see everybody in the chat there. A Grail guitar or a collection of guitars? I think about this a lot, whether we're more likely to chase a Grail, that's one guitar that'll answer all our musical questions, or are we more likely to have a collection, small or large, many guitars for many different questions? And if one or the other, what is it about us that led us there? I'm very curious to hear what you all have to say about it because Lord knows, I think about this way, way too much. So Grail or collection? Let's get into it today. See the description and the link for my online store, t-shirt, hoodies, hats, etc. Also, you can go to the links and go to my Patreon page if you want to stay in closer touch with me. If you've been thinking about doing a YouTube channel, go and grab my YouTube Mastery for Musicians course. Of course, my 5 Watt World Barber electronics overdrive pedals are available. And David's got a number of the pedals on sale for Black Friday through the end of the year. I want to let people know that the pedals that we featured, that actually the barbecue pedal that we featured in the 5 Reasons for a 5E3 video last week, amazingly sold out in just a couple of days. And David's reordering, and those should be available again in about a month. These things are all hand built. So circle back to David when he's got those in stocks again. As always, all the links are in the description. Remember, if you have a comment or a question, put a question marks in the chat with some space so it pops out. Otherwise, I'll assume y'all are talking to each other, which is great. I always encourage the chat. Bebe actually has a meeting, but it looks like he dropped in to put links there. He's a moderator to the stars and also to me. The music in the intro, as some people already put in the chat, is John Cordy playing clean. John Cordy playing without a lot of gain. That's a Grail moment in itself. He's playing Jake. That one is not his Nacho. That John went after that video came out later. He bought his own Nacho, but that is Jake Loosemore's Nacho caster, and it was when John was playing it for the first time. In the context of this conversation today, I think a Nacho is certainly a level of Grail guitar for many, and also within reach. Maybe if you purged everything else, if you blew out the collection and just went Nacho, you probably could reach one. But everybody's got different means. So, okay, so everybody's already jumping in here. You're preloading my question. The first question has to be, I got a lot of notes. I got a lot of things to talk about, but I want to hear from everybody. Just load it right into the chat. I've got ramblings on collecting and Grails and kind of in my own experience. So I want you to put it in the chat right now. Grail, it's Brogan 95 says, what defines a Grail? We're going to do that right at the top. I'm going to do my definition and you guys can chime in and say whether or not you think that fits. But put in the chat whether you think you're a Grail guy or gal, or if you are a collection person and why that is. All right. So as Bergen immediately said, he's right. It's good essay writing to define your terms. So what is a Grail? Let's get me back on screen. There we go. What's a Grail? I'd say it's a guitar that we never thought we'd be able to swing. Something just out of reach, or a guitar seen as the ultimate in that particular niche. What I could afford working in higher education without having had kids, etc., is different than folks. Other folks, it depends. I think everybody's at different places on their financial ladder. But I've had some really nice guitars. I have some really nice guitars now. And this first batch of Grails I'm going to list doesn't include anything I've ever owned. But I think when you're talking Grails, you have to start with the stuff that really is at the top. So I would say in a few different categories here, a pre-war Martin. That's a pre-war Martin D28 from the guys at Retro Fret. I would say that a 50s Gibson Jumbo, that's a J200 from the 1950s, would also be in that category. Any 50s or 60s Stratocaster probably. This is a 50s, of course. I can't tell what specific year it is. That's a picture from Premier Guitar. A 58 Les Paul. It's from my buddy at Abalone Guitars. That's a 58 original Les Paul, not a repro. That's a real thing with a really nice top. I'm sure there's a good story there. I'd say any late 50s or maybe even early 60s Gibson Jazz Box would fit. I imagine things, custom built stuff like Diakistos, of course, would be as well. A 53 Telecaster, or any of the Blackguard or White Guard years for that matter. And not to leave you bass players out, I would say that any early 60s or late 50s P-bass or jazz bass, this is a 62 stack knob jazz bass, but certainly all of those things probably would be seen as grails. I have this idea for a video called why can't we make them as well as they did back then? And if you notice everything on that Grail list is a vintage guitar. And I think that it's this craftsmanship from the 50s and 60s that we can't seem to be replicated with our science and machines these days. But the fact is the next layer of Grails is likely very high quality copies of everything from the earlier list. So Collings or acoustics or electrics, custom shop Les Pauls or Fender custom shop guitars. Jazz boxes, I would say that actually when they still build them, the Gibson jazz boxes they're building now are just as good as any, and lots of other builders too. But they're not cheap because hand-built guitars are just that, they're hand-built. Yeah, people are adding them in. I'm not looking right now for what your Grail is. You're going to get a minute to do that. Tell me whether you lean towards a Grail, a single Grail guitar that is everything, or whether you're leaning towards a collection. All right? I'd say for lots of folks that watch 5 Watt World, the step up from import to Fender USA might also be a Grail guitar, or the move from Epiphone to Gibson US, let alone up to the custom shop level. I think the definition of a Grail seems to be whatever is maybe slightly just out of our reach out of our circumstances, but something that we could get to if we spent some time working on it. See, I keep doing this. I leave the thing up. But if we can buy a Grail, even if we could get our Grail guitar, like you guys have been putting it in the chat here, what would that guitar be? This is the second big question. So if you have a Grail guitar in your head, what would that be? And I'll answer it for myself. A Grail guitar for me. I had a conversation with a vintage dealer, a friend of Jeff McErlane's, and I was talking about a birth year Stratocaster, and I'm not even a Strat guy, but a birth year guitar, a 1960. And he goes, can we call it 61? 61 were more dependably good. They really settled into the correct thickness of the board and everything, the rosewood board. And there's a certain appeal in that, but I have to say that it's probably just symmetry, not really my longing for that specific guitar. And I probably own, in my Collings, they're not here, but I probably own things that I consider to be Grails at this point. But let me talk a little bit, if you will. Well, actually, let me do some of these from the chat because it looks like there's some real good ones. Wow. Gabriel Bergman got his Grail last year, a 64 ES335, just like Clapton's. That's amazing. That would be a 60. I guess I could go Telecaster. That's my birth year too. Maybe we share a birth year there. 59 Custom. R9 Wildwood Ultralight Age, nice. 62 Strat. Yeah, I think that we're all on the same place. Oh, David's here. David has some nice guitars, so I guess you gotta go big or stay home. You know, big dog, get off the porch, all that. 59 Les Paul Burst. I actually heard that there's a guy in town who actually has a Burst here, right here in Syracuse. I've yet to meet him. Yeah, here we go. So somebody else is saying an attainable Grail, an American HSS Strat. Yeah, so it's a small collection of Grails, which a lot of people put in the chat as the ultimate. Amanda, you're going to make us cry. It's the holidays. I'll eventually inherit my father's guitars, and regardless of what shape they're in, they will be my grails. Ah, that's too sweet. That's too sweet. You're taking me off track here. All right, so let me ramble a little bit about this because it took me a long time to get my own head around this. Okay, it took my whole life because I only recently kind of figured this out about myself, and I'll get to why. I've had a lifetime of different hobbies, things running along parallel to the music, which I've been doing since I was 14. But these other hobbies have come along and gone, sometimes returning, sometimes not. And along the way, I've made friends with people who are singularly into that one hobby. They go down that rabbit hole and they never climb back out. People that focus their whole life on that one thing, that one hobby, and they become an expert. And I've always sought out those experts. I've never hesitated to ask for directions or take lessons. There was a faculty member who used to park his car next to my office when I was the associate registrar at Binghamton. And I noticed in the back window of his Jeep Cherokee, he had a sign for Trout Unlimited. So he asked me if I would take his grade sheets through the window. And I said I would do that if he would teach me to cast a fly rod. So I spent the whole next summer standing in rivers, sometimes next to Bruce Norcross, learning to cast, sitting on a bank. I even was smoking a pipe back then. It was what I refer to as my Orvis years. And I had a great summer, and I don't think I caught one fish all summer. I was slightly more successful when I decided to get into bird hunting and start grouse hunting. And I became best friends with the best. Oh, this is me fly fishing. I got pictures of everything today. That's me on the West Branch of the Delaware on a long weekend or week-long trip that I used to take that was really close to Binghamton. Anyway, I became really good friends with the best shotgun shooter at my gun club. And eventually that led to yearly trips for a dozen years, driving from upstate New York to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for bird hunting. And like I said, it's during one of those Orvis years, and whether it was trout fishing or bird hunting with my less than accurate shooting, I used to joke that very few animals were harmed during those activities. But I did actually have more success. And before I started actually getting out, and before I got a dog, and before I started actually hunting, I actually would go skeet shooting twice a week for 2 years before I ever got my first dog. I figured the dog would know his job, and he did, but I better not let him down by not knowing mine. The guy I was hunting with is one of the best wild bird shots I've ever known. He has English setters, shoots vintage side-by-side shotguns, reloads his own shells, trains his own dogs. He embraces all the aspects of his singular interest, and he's taught me a lot along the way. Around about the same time, I wasn't doing many things with my older brother, so I decided, even though I had never done it as a teenager, I should do some deer hunting with him. And to get ready for that, I started shooting in a handgun league once a week, year-round, both indoors at 20 feet and outdoors at 25 and 50 yards. I'd go up there and sit in my brother's bow stands, really as an excuse to spend some time with him and my family. And later I morphed. Yeah, this is a photograph that my nephew thought I should have of the one deer that I shot. And why I didn't keep shooting deer isn't because there weren't lots of deer there. That'd be another whole conversation we could have. Probably not really very germane to this channel. After I did that amount of handgun shooting, I ended up doing competitive, what they like to refer to as defensive handgun shooting. And the guy that I studied with then was an FBI agent who finished his career teaching at Quantico for 10 years. And TC was our regular Sunday morning instructor. And anybody who spent every Sunday as we did, I used to call it the Church of Loud, we got pretty good at it. And then sometime in my 40s, I also got back into motorcycles, which led to a Ducati, which led to me customizing the Ducati for track days. And this is me at Loudon International Raceway, which I always thought was a very funny name, only because it was the least international kind of place I've ever lived, really. It's out in the middle of New Hampshire. So I ended up doing 5 years of that with various experts. And every time I'm trying to learn from these people and going down the path of what I considered grails. I've always aspired to learn as much from my mentors as I could, because it's just that these friends have been these guys have been friends to me, and as much as they could teach me, and then I'd do reading and try to pay them back, always trying to keep up. I'd noticed that most of these guys were readers, having to get through the New England winter somehow. And that's probably a lot more biography than I expected to do in this little rant today, this little ramble. But it illustrates my longing to excel in one thing, at least one thing at a time. And this is echoed in my guitar playing and guitar collecting as well. I get into one thing and I go all in, spending all my waking time on that new hobby or another. It's a long way around of thinking about how I wanted to know as much as the experts I got to spend time with along the way. And I've come to grips with the fact that it's just not who I am. I'm interested in too many things to stay in one forever. In each of the hobbies that was the gear, there was gear that was considered Grail, the ultimate tool for the job, something that another practitioner of the hobby would look at, smile, and quietly nod their approval. I've never had what I think of as a Grail, but certainly some of the guitars I've owned or own would be like Grail to somebody else. For me, that was a custom-built shotgun to my measurements, or a customized revolver for deer hunting, or that customized Ducati Monster. I found that having a Grail, or a near Grail as it might be, in any of my hobbies gives me an amazing tool for that hobby, but it also is a signal to those people that you're a member of the club, that you at least value some of the things that other people value. I'm burning through my ideas and my notes here, so let me do some of the stuff in the chat, and then we'll come back to there. Remember, put some question marks if it's a question. And I'll share some of this. Nick, Nick Granville in New Zealand. Nick, you shouldn't be awake at this time of day, my brother. Veronica Phillips says, after 7 decades of playing, I have 6 guitars, one at each of the major food groups, and the second 335. I'm not afraid to take on vacations. That's great. CompuQuarter says, as a guitar player, I think I'd like to have just one great guitar, but I think I'd go with a contemporary builder. A Collings I-20 would be versatile. I'd still want a Tele, Strat, and a Les Paul for recording. I hear you. Uncle Ike says, at this point in my guitar journey, I'd rather have a Grail than a collection, fewer guitars to care for. Fits my life better right now. I think we can all relate to this. Easter Sunday says, I have a 1980 Les Paul. It was supposed to be a Grail. I have 2 guitars built for me. Those were supposed to be Grails. Then I got a 1960 Gibson double cut. That was supposed to be a Grail. I think we can relate to that. Worst part of fishing is catching something. I think that might apply to the previous comment. The trout coma. Yeah, that's another whole conversation. Trout fishing is a whole other thing. And frankly, I don't have a life where there's enough time to do it, which is another question in itself. Novo Cirrus P2. Greco Super Real Les Paul, speaking of attainable ones. It's very good. Lee Grant was here last Friday. We got to have some lunch, and I took him to Ish, and he made me promise to help him not buy a guitar, and instead he did buy a beautiful sapphire, limited sapphire blue 6120. So he's making a joke that I let him down and let him buy a guitar when we were doing our guitar shopping. Victor says he's got 7 wannabe birth year guitars. Wannabe birth years? They're wannabe Grails? I'm not following. interesting twist. Oh wait, if it can say Grail is a guitar that currently owned by an artist, then Mike McCready's Strat can be anything you want it to be. Anything that is what you're chasing is what a Grail is. 60s candy apple red Jazzmaster, matching headstock, tortoiseshell guard. All right, I'm back to Amanda's sweet comment. So let me get back to the beginning here. John J.L. Trim says, I'd have a hard time choosing between the Grail and Life of Brian, making the Monty Python reference that we rely on Jeff McElwain for. Jeff must be busy. Here we go. Raymond Mears says, I just retired at age 76 at my wife's insistence. I needed a retirement gift, not a watch person. I got a Sweetwater's Last Gretsch White Falcon. Oh my God, what a guitar to add to my other 10. Well, that's a sweet story too. All right, let me wrap up my ramblings here, and then we'll get back into talking about the pros and cons of this. Where was I? This Grail subject comes up often in the watch collecting world. It's something I got into because I was very interested in collecting. I was also interested in carrying my phone less. And I'll admit it, I got pulled in. And my wife just bought me a watch box, and the box holds 8 watches. And they're not all fancy watches. But at the end of a recent video that Adrian Barker and Britt Pierce did, it was a podcast kind of format where they were talking about this subject. They got into the question of whether somebody who would rather have a Rolex Submariner dive watch or a Zinn's pilot watch. I knew immediately what my answer would be. I knew immediately I would take the Zinn. And Zinn are a German watch company where the company still has an individual watchmaker make every single watch from top to bottom. They're not assembly line watches. They're individually built. They're also about a third the price of a Submariner. And for me, most importantly, if you're interested in watches as a hobby, if you're not interested in watches as a hobby, you've probably never heard of Zinn. So if you're wearing a Zinn, it makes a statement to belonging to the community of watch collectors, or at least people interested in watches. Whereas wearing a Rolex might just be saying, I have enough money to buy what's obvious or expected. And I don't want to slam anybody's Rolex Submariner choice. Some people go down that rabbit hole right and proper, save for years to have that one watch that they love. Also, they might get an old one. So that was my choice. And I've got a little wrist roll video. Yes, my wife ended up buying me that Zinn for Christmas this year. I am that lucky guy. So guitars can be the same. I own 2. This is the thumbnail from today. I own 2 Collings guitars. This one is the City Limits P90 that weighs about 8 pounds. So it's a Les Paul style guitar. The prices on these have really gone up. But when I bought them, they cost about the same as a higher end Gibson Custom Shop. Not Murphy Lab, someplace between Custom Shop and Murphy Lab. I'm not saying that the Collings guitars are better guitars, but clearly someone has to be into guitars enough to know to consider a Collings over a Gibson. So, am I a Grail guy? Once I had these 2 guitars, I thought I would be done. I sold 11 guitars at the time, pocketed a good piece of money and kept these 2. Bought 3 and then sold 1 and went back to 2. Was I ready to quit trying new things, playing and buying guitars? I've always said that I like people that are interested in interesting, 2 things that seem to go hand in hand. And if I paid attention to my own serial hobby collecting, I probably should have guessed a long time ago that I'd be moving from Telecasters to Les Pauls, back to a Gretsch, back to my PRS Miras, back to a week playing my single pickup Strandberg. You get the idea. And likely, if I take a long look at it, having been raised by people born in the Depression, I was also sort of always led to believe that I should be happy with one good or great guitar. It took me years to realize that, just like different hobbies, different guitars are reflections of the different parts of my personality. I think the current state of the world helped me figure this out too. People are not as simple as our political parties would like us to believe. People can and often do hold very different parts of themselves very comfortably that might seem contradictory to others, but not to us. You can love the new Julian Lage record and still enjoy pulling out that old Cheap Trick or Slayer or Pat Metheny album. And you certainly can play that variety of music on one kind of guitar, but having different guitars can take you to different places. And we're all different. We all have different reasons and desires for different instruments. A comment that I often get is that people's wives don't understand why they need multiple guitars, but their wife has no problem owning lots of different kinds of shoes. So since Amanda is here, I will apologize for this being sort of husband-centric, but the fact is the channel does have 95% of the viewers are men. And I think this is actually a lesson that the men need to try to work on, because it took me a while. I think if men tried, they might realize that there isn't so much disconnect between these two things as there is really common ground. My wife actually collects shoes and handbags as well. When I asked her what her grail was, she had no problem citing something that maybe was just out of reach. Chanel, in case you're wondering. But she was quick to say that wouldn't, even if she had one of those bags, it wouldn't express herself in the same way that a variety does. And I like how my wife is interested and interesting in lots of different subjects, and her interest in shoes and bags is simply a reflection of that. So Amanda says she doesn't own a lot of shoes. We'll come back to it, Amanda, okay? So I'd encourage you to have that conversation with your partner about why each of you wants to spend money on the collection of things that you're into. As they always say, you never know if you don't ask. So in much the same way that guitars pile up for channel projects here, only to be purged back to a smaller number periodically, this makes sense to her. She doesn't really question that at all. And there's still part of me that wishes that I was a one guitar guy, that I had that sort of monastic focus, that I could just play that one pickup Strandberg that weighs 4.5 pounds and sort of disappears. It's so ergonomically perfect. And find all of the different chordal colors in that one instrument, as so many of my heroes have. And after 50 years of playing, I don't imagine that I'll ever get to be that guy. I really should just look at my life. And as the therapists love to say, you're good the way you are. You know, that old "you're okay, I'm okay" thing. That was a big book in the 70s. For those of you who are too young to remember that terrible book. It's probably a fine book. Anyway, I do wonder at what guitars I'll decide to keep when I'm no longer making videos about guitars. A hi-fi channel that I follow recently made a video called My Retirement Rig Part 1. Got a ton of views. And so I've been thinking a lot about what would make that cut for me. What would be my retirement rig? But I'm sure it won't be one guitar. It'll probably be more like 3 to 5 electrics and the same number of acoustics. And I'll feel okay about it. Because man, it took me a long time to be okay about getting here. So that's the big ramble. What time is it? My clock is missing. Halfway through. You know how I always say that I don't have an hour's worth of material? I don't have an hour's worth of material. I'm counting on all of you. So I'm going to go back to the chat, but as I do that, I want you to say, how about you? Are you sitting there wondering at me, overthinking this as usual? Or does any of this resonate for you, for why there is more than one guitar in the rack behind you there? All right, let me run the TrueFire ad, and we're going to come back to the chat, and we'll have a conversation about that. And frankly, anything else you want to talk about as this week of Thanksgiving. So here, let me run the TrueFire ad spot.
I always promote lessons over new gear, so TrueFire has been the perfect partner for 5 Watt World. I'm interested in all kinds of music, and by taking advantage of TrueFire's All Access Pass, I can always find something to scratch the itch I have for learning more about guitar. As a viewer of 5 Watt World, you get an exclusive 50% discount on the All Access Pass, or you can take a 35% discount on any of the courses in the catalog by using the dedicated links in the video description. I really enjoy TrueFire, and I'll bet you will too. Sign up using the link in the description to support 5 Watt World and get some great lessons at the same time. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this section of the video.
All right. Now, let's do the thing that I do enjoy the most. I have to tell you that it's always kind of a little stressful for me to write these things up. It eats a Monday and Tuesday to get a live stream together, put my 6 or 7 pages of ideas together. The part I really enjoy is the part where we do this back and forth. So, excuse me. You guys are hot today. You're too fast. Lee says that you get excited about different subjects is interesting. I am similar. You love watches. I love fountain pens. We all have our passions. That's true. People have, I actually on that same live stream, Britt Pierce said she thinks everybody should be able to have one expensive hobby, which is a pretty privileged thing to say. And she acknowledged that too. But we're not going to be able to keep up with the back and forth. And I don't think these are all designed for me. Amanda says, I think spouses need to be clear about expectations. If you want to always be able to buy gear, put it in the budget and ensure your partner has an equal part of that budget. That's good advice. Man, you guys are all over this. I can't keep up. Let me go back. I saw some good stuff go by. Veronica said, I make a point of playing music my wife likes and going on hikes she likes, but I loathe. She bought me an amp that I wanted. You know, it's balance. It's all about balance. Glenn Michael Thompson says, adding to what he said earlier about one guitar fitting his life more these days, tired of upkeep of over 12 guitars, would love to have a custom ergonomic guitar by a contemporary luthier and an older hollow body to replace the 56 Gibson ES 225T that was stolen. Kelly says, how about one guitar, but sell it and get another when you want to change? That's certainly an economical way to do it. And honestly, for years, I think most people, that was what they did. It's what we all did out of necessity. And I'd freely admit that not all the guitars, let's see, the guitars that are in this room, I bought the Les Paul. The mirror was sent to me to check out. And there's a Sterling over here that you can't see, a Sterling Cutlass that I was sent to check out. Running a channel is a weird thing because I'm always I like to look at the guitars and play the guitars for the companies that I'm doing the histories of, so I can speak with some personal authority at least about where the company is right now, what the quality of the instruments are right now. And some of those stay and some of those leave. I don't have a count on how many guitars are here right now, but it's a much smaller list of guitars that I would keep for the long haul. Jonathan Mark says, I have 14 guitars. My favorites are the Andersons, Sir Classic, and a Bogner Shiva amp. Great machines. Does a painter have one paintbrush? The one I usually get for this one is, would you only have one color on your palette? I think both of those work. I think those are always solid analogies. LeWolf is surprised that I talked about shoes, and then he puts up a whole bunch of red shoes. Hey, I went there because it comes up. I love this. 83 pairs of shoes. I actually saw a photograph I think it was in an architecture magazine at one point. I was very interested in Japanese architecture, modern Japanese architecture. And there was a picture of somebody's front hallway. You know, in Japan, you take your shoes off before you go in the house. And there was about a dozen pair of black business shoes, black brogues. And at a glance, they all looked the same. There were 12 different, but ostensibly the same looking shoes. Josh Park says he stopped at 7, no more room in my house. For years, I actually limited my guitar collection, but this is when I had 30 guitars. I limited it by, I had, those baker's racks that you can buy. I bought it probably at Home Depot or someplace, Lowe's. And I think I could put 3 cases in each shelf and one on top. Yeah, that'd become about right. So each rack would hold 10 guitars. And I had 3 racks. And then when I wanted to put a different guitar on, then I had to get rid of a guitar because it wouldn't fit, the case wouldn't fit anymore. The racks are still in the basement, though the guitars are not in the racks. We get too much other stuff to go in the racks. I should say that there are people who have, there are people who are at a financial level where they can have a collection of guitars that we would all consider grails. I've become friends, at least acquaintances, with a guy who lives in Japan named Mike Thompson, who recently acquired the first Gibson 1958 ES 355 ever built. Started out a life as cherry, and it's kind of an orangey color now. You can find Mike on, I think it's Archangels or something on Instagram, and his guitar collection is amazing. And people like Bill Frisell and Pat Metheny stop in. He's pretty close with Pat Metheny. And his collection is incredible, but he just seems like a very down-to-earth guy. I think it's a good example of just, it is what it is. Brazil Brush Rocks says, from watches to motorbikes, Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. Yeah, Zen, it's pronounced right. S-I-N-N is pronounced Zen. Somebody else said that Zen are a gun guy watch. I wouldn't think that. I don't know what that means, but I'm fascinated when we put things together that way. So maybe that's a watch and gun guy. I don't know. Uncle Ike says, what are your thoughts on how you would differentiate a Grail guitar from an aspirational guitar? I would say an aspirational guitar, a guitar that is a stretch, something where we're going to have to make decisions about saving, or like I did, consolidating, where you're going to, I sold guitars I liked. I had a pair of ES 339, really unusual and rare, small-bodied, fully hollow guitars, Gibsons. And I sold both of those guitars and ended up with a, one of the 2 Collins guitars I have is what they call their I-30, which is like an ES 335, but it's slightly smaller than a Gibson, and mine has P90s on it, like an old I-30 or a Casino would have. Tim Lurch told me that when I asked him about that before I bought it, Tim Lurch told me he thought it was maybe the most perfect all-around guitar he'd ever played, because he made a few videos with one that Collins lent him. So. The Mini Guitar Society icon says, about a year and a half ago, I decided I wanted to own every Mini under 23.75 available in the US. Currently available, ever available? I think we want to hear more about that. Motorbike Ray quotes, I don't know who that original quote is. Skeeter Skelton or some other famous gun writer from the 30s and 40s, I think, said, beware the man with one gun, for surely he will know how to use it. And I hear that all the time, and I think it does apply to everything. But again, I think that sentiment is coming out of the 30s and 40s at a time in a pretty rough economic time in the United States. You guys are talking to each other. It's pretty easy saying it's pretty easy to think you have a Grail only to have a new dream the next day. I think that all comes back to knowing what it is for you, which is one of the reasons I overthink this, why I spend so much time thinking about it. I should tell you that, I'll take the Zen off. This Zen is not just a Zen 104, which is a pretty amazing watch in itself. It's actually a special edition Zen 104. Zen 104s are often very shiny. This one's bead blasted, very tooly. It's also got a red seconds hand, which is an unusual feature. You can get those on these. I told my wife that the red second hand sweeping around reminds me of her. And it does every time I look at it, because she got me the watch as well. But it's sort of that next level. So a watch person might glance at it and realize it's a 104, but a real watch person might realize that it's a special edition 104, one of 200 that were built. And and the numbers on the back and blah, blah, blah. You know, you can get into that stuff. Amanda's the philosopher from up north. Where does one turn when their Grail loses its sparkle? I think then we're back to like you change out and you go someplace else. I have had custom things built for me. I've had custom guitars. I have a beautiful custom acoustic that hasn't lost its sparkle ever. I've had custom guns made when I was doing competition. And I have to say that almost always the custom work never quite, and they were great gunsmiths, but they never came up to what I imagined it was going to be. As opposed to finding something and connecting with it. Oh, that's very cool. Could it be a guitar I would build myself in the future? Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the process, the idea. I think we're back to, Victor saying his 7 birth year guitars are 1958 reissues. That's a great answer. That's all these things all these opinions are legitimate. I'm a very mom steam here. More is more. As a guy with how many guitars does he have? They all look exactly the same. Yeah, my custom acoustic has a what is it? Hermitage? The case weighs 3 times what the guitar weighs. So I usually don't take it out of the house either. Back to the beginning here just to see where we are. Oh, a bass player. All right. You would think I want a collection as I own multiple basses, 9 at last count. However, having always been a fan of Duck Dunn, I would trade them all for a real 57P. I have an AVRI from 82. That's a great year. You have one of the best AVRI years, I think, in general. I would say that for lots of people, that AVR from 82, the first run AVRIs would be seen as a Grail. So good for you, man. Interesting. I like it when we make rules for ourselves around these kinds of things. For any large purchase, such as a luxury watch or a Grail guitar, is that you should only buy if you can afford to buy 2. I think that kind of goes along with the old thing about the stock market, that you should only be in there if you can afford to lose it and not feel too bad about it. But didn't Ed Bickert change the pickup in the front of his guitar, his Blackguard over the years? I think Ed modded his guitar. I think that's true. He had just the one. But I think of those guys too. I think of people like that. Or like I did a video years ago about really at the beginning of the channel and about how many guitars you need. And I basically did a whole list of people who are guitar heroes who played one type of guitar, if not one single guitar. Or you look at Gilmore. Go watch my video on the Black Strat, and he just kept modding the thing, and it isn't even the same guitar anymore. But in his mind, it still was the mojo that was that instrument until he eventually sold it. Adam Buchwald at Circle Strings built my custom acoustic. I've played it on the live stream. I wish I could tell you which live stream I played it on. It's an OM style guitar. It has black walnut back and sides from the farm where I grew up. And it has black walnut from the farm I grew up on, has an Adirondack spruce top, and it has binding and a back piece to make the back wide enough from the original pieces, which are flame maple from Jeff Parsons from the 15 years I lived in Vermont. So it sort of has lots of touch points for all these parts of my life. And that guitar is a Grail. That is the only guitar, when this comes up, are there any guitars you wouldn't sell? That's the only guitar that I wouldn't sell. All the rest are special. And the idea of somebody said earlier that you just sell off one when you want something else, it's not always easy to find the guitar that you're looking for. I will say that after all this time. It's not easy to find those Mira X guitars that I really like so much. Or this Gold Top Deluxe was a guitar of the week. They made 150 of them in 2007, and it was at a time when they chambered them. So this chambered Deluxe Les Paul might not sound the same as David Barber's 10-pound standard that he recently got and loves. But it sounds amazing. And frankly, it's a great all-around guitar. I can do pretty much anything. And I spent 2 months playing just the Les Paul as an experiment. And you know, push comes to shove, I can do anything on that guitar. Anything I want to do. Anything I can do with my fingers, I can do on that Les Paul. But it weighs 8 pounds, and it's not easy to find a guitar that you would really like the neck on and all those kinds of things. So I think it's tough. It really comes down to what can you afford? There's no way around that. It always comes back to that. And I think that having that limitation is good for all of us. Now I want to buy a guitar. So this is the thing. I have these conversations about guitar. None of this is designed to make you want to buy a guitar. I get a lot of comments that I should have abandoned my most music from the least gear tagline a long time ago because I make so many history videos. But I actually went out of my way a couple of years ago to make a video called Enough and the Small Histories to say what my attitudes are about why I make videos that periodically about, like even the 5-watt, the one I just did about 5 reasons for the 5E3 Tweed Deluxe. To me, that's a most music from the least gear video because it shows you how to take 1 amp, have just the 1 amp and get all these different tones out of it. And frankly, to the cynical brutes that thought I was all about selling pedals, that's not what it was about. It was about wringing sounds out of one amplifier. You could do it with other kinds of pedals. I just work with David, and David builds some of the best pedals in the world. So obviously, why wouldn't I do that? Also, David is an amazing demo player. So working with David on videos is a lot of fun. So interesting. Veronica says, I approach guitars based on their voice. Some are tenors, altos, sopranos. I'm going to sneeze here. I think that's true. I have an acoustic that I bought. There you go. Excuse me. An acoustic that I bought that I keep tuned down a whole step. And then it capos really, really well. And it plays very in tune when it's capoed up the neck. And so we had the jam, my acoustic jam here the other night. And often if somebody's just strumming in down in the root position, I'll capo way up the neck and play like a high guitar part. And that guitar, which is a mahogany guitar with an Adirondack top, is just great for that. Yeah, Bicker added a humbucker up front, right? Mark Spurgeon says, why is this chat still going? Because I said what I wanted to say, and we're working it out, Mark. If I bored you to tears, let me know. All right, other questions, other things you guys want to talk about that we don't always get to do? I don't need to keep everybody here. The wife and I are going to go grab some dinner out. Joshua Park says, at the end of the day, 1 Strat, a Fender Deluxe, and a Tube Screamer. Done. Oh, you're triggering me here, Sonny. Just one more, honey, not an original quote, but I've used it a lot for the last 30 years. You know, when I made the How Many Guitars Do You Need video, I got so many versions of Just One More that I started deleting them. I don't think it added anything to the conversation. And I also think it's just an expression of not... David's asking, where am I going to eat? Just an expression of not understanding limits. And there are limits. It's kind of like I haven't been making time to play guitar lately. And the fact is, I probably watch too much TV in the evening. Yeah, making time to do these things is just always a choice. I think we're going to go out to Salt City Market, which is an incubator restaurant space here in Syracuse that has a really nice bar with a great beer selection on one end. And the guys that work at the bar are great and very knowledgeable. And then there's all these different restaurants that are mostly ethnic kind of food. There's a great Jamaican place. There's a great soul food place. It's a good Thai place, Vietnamese. So you can go in there and eat any kind of food you want and go to the bar and get whatever you want to drink. So that's where I'm going. Must be you are semi-local. I thought I saw that you were nearby. Geneva? I think David said he was in Geneva. That's very close. David, I grew up in Lyons, New York. Josh says everybody's going to come down. That's a good idea. I think you should do that. Actually, I am way overdue for doing an upstate New York meetup. I've done them in when I've traveled in Spain and in France. So that's it. Robert Nolan says, anytime I'm interested in buying one, doing my best to try to sell two. I'll eventually get it down. Well, and I'll say what, though I failed with Lee Grant the other day, if you ever really need some support, you need someone to talk you off the ledge, email me. Just email me at 5wattworld@gmail.com. I'm always glad to talk about the pros and cons of a certain guitar and just kick it around. It'd be pretty hollow of me to keep using my tagline and not offer that as an ongoing service. Blues Brothers quote. I think it was 6 chickens, wasn't it? Or 3 whole chickens, is it? And dry white toast was Elwood's order. Everybody keep Veronica here for another 7 or 8 minutes. Four fried chickens and a Coke. There you go. Victoria G. Yeah, I've actually been thinking about doing this meetup at Ish Guitars, and the guys at Ish would be very cool about it. So I'll get on it again. I'll make it a priority. I really enjoyed the ones overseas were like half a dozen people, which was pretty crazy. How many denim shirts? These are existential questions. How many denim shirts is the correct number? This is a new shirt, but I still have the shirt that I started making all the videos in. I think it's distracting to use different clothes in all the different videos. It's not. You shouldn't wonder what I'm going to be wearing when you tune in. It's not about me. It's about the storyline. So at this point in my life, the correct answer is I probably have 4. I have 2 writing ones and 2 performing ones, if you will. I started life as a 12-string guy. I just made the Epiphone video, and I said that the first good guitar I ever owned was an Epiphone FT35 from 1975, made in the Matsumoku factory in Japan. And of course, I needed a picture, so I went looking, only to learn that I could still buy. I bought that guitar in 1975 for $225. I vividly remember saving the money, or having my parents kick in, or whatever it was. And I could still buy one of those guitars for about just under $500. I was a little tempted, but then I can still remember the life of a 12-string, and I talked myself out of it. Oh, Brent says he'd rather have 10 different guitars than any single Gibson. We'll have to have a group therapy thing about the Gibson topic, Brent. I wonder what that's about. The purple T-shirt. The guys at TrueFire will thank you. I started wearing the purple T-shirts to go with the background because that's the color that they use in the advertising, and it kind of stuck, as they say. So I probably have more purple T-shirts than I have denim shirts at this point. Other questions? Yeah, the new store is great, and I've had no problems like I had with the old store. So my apologies again for everybody. No, I was playing in a folk group. My first real playing experience was playing in a folk group, playing with other people at 14, 15, 16 years old, every single week for I grew up Catholic, so a folk mass But playing with other people at that age was just extraordinary. So good. But if you want 12-string jazz, go to the early part of Pat Metheny's catalog, and you'll get 12-string and weird tunings to boot. I do have a Nashville tuned. Oops, wrong one. Where'd it go? I have an acoustic. I have a Taylor Mini that's set up for Nashville tuning. And it's very cool. I'll actually play it on the acoustic jam when the mandolin player sits out and moves to guitar to do a song. I'll play that. They're pretty loud. They really can cut through, and I have to really play them with a really light pick and strum it with a light pick to not get too loud. I was just going to save you from this, Rob. He says he has a collection of $150 to $2,500 guitars and gassing for a birth year guitar for a 1979 Strat and a Les Paul. There are good guitars built then. I'm just going to say that right off. But finding them and a 1979 is going to be, that will be a long pursuit. And then I want you to report back here, because I will, if you can find those, you're a better man than me. So where are we? Here we go. All right. I think we're out of time here. Veronica, sorry, you're going to have to go for that hike. We all need the exercise. Okay, I'm gonna have John Cordy play us out as he played us in without any gain on that Nacho. I did actually borrow a Nacho from a guy, very, very generously lent me a Nacho caster when I was making the Blackguard video. I must say 4 or 5 years ago now. And I've said it here before. It was not set up the way I would have it set up, and it still played as easily as any guitar I've ever played. And it was just amazing. It was an amazing guitar. Now I understand they're all different, and I don't think John likes his own as much as he likes Jake Loosemore's. But that's a thing. Everyone is different. We're back to wood matters. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody here, and the folks in Canada probably had theirs already. Yes, Amanda, when was Canadian Thanksgiving? Last week, usually? We're here for the Veronica. We're just not endlessly so. All right. Thanks, everybody. Remember, I want to thank Beve for being here. I want to remind everybody to reach out to TrueFire. Let them know. Use the link when you can. If you don't use that other, then go ahead and fill out the difference on what you saved in some TrueFire merch. And I'll be back here in a couple weeks. You can hear my voice is still a little scratchy, but I'm getting back all the time. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.